Hey guys, John here. Melodic Techno 4 is out, and I found the sequence called Ratchet Clash, which is pretty cool. So I built a small little arrangement here. I did a lead, and then on bar 5, the drums come in, and some other cool stuff happens later on. And then I added some interesting stuff, so some cool stuff, which is kind of the point of this video, to add some interesting flavors to your sound. So for example, let's solo this here so we just hear this sequence and the lead and then the drums, and let's take a listen to that real quick. Okay, so definitely a pretty cool sequence, sounds really awesome, and I thought, let's add some other stuff to this because there's this concept I read, and I think it was in a magazine, and it was from the producers of the band Yes and the song Owner of a Lonely Heart. And basically, in that article that I was reading, they wanted to make every spot of that song interesting. So that's why you hear those weird, quirky kind of sounds. And I think there's something to that where you can lay out an arrangement, you can make a song, and then every little so often you hear these interesting little ear candy things, and that kind of makes the song unique. It makes it its own, and also kind of makes it interesting throughout the whole time of listening. So if we unsolo this, I have a couple things here. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 extra things I added just to kind of enhance what's going on here and make it a little bit more impactful. So let's take a listen again with all this other stuff here, and then we're going to go through each one of them. Okay, so it's basically still the same thing, but all these little tiny pieces kind of make it more interesting. So the first one I want to bring your attention to is this riser here. So if we go here and then we can solo this, let's take a listen to this guy. That's all that one's doing. And then the next one, we kind of have this triangle kind of shape here, which sounds like this. And then it goes into this guy, which is just a basic filter sweep, right? Nothing too crazy. Right, not too crazy there. And then the next one is going to be this second riser, which is going to be this guy. And then it hits the sweep again here, and then we go back to that triangle here, but a different note. And then we go back to this sweep again. And then down here, this is kind of this small little rhythm thing. So let's take a listen to that guy, which is the RHY here. So let's solo this, and let's take a listen. So nothing too crazy, just some little interesting sounds. And then we do the same riser here again on bar 12 that we did on bar 4 going into 5, so the downbeat here. Now this kind of brings the energy up, and then it drops here when just the drums and everything are going. And with these things too, you can always reuse some of the things. It's not like you make one of these interesting ear candies and then that's it, and you don't use it again. You can totally do that. You can always change what's in the piano roll. You can change the modulations, perhaps change the notes. So you can still use the same patch multiple times in a few different creative ways. So here we're kind of using the sweep again. Then we're using the triangle thing again, and then the sweep. And then down here is this interesting percussion. And this is all in Avenger, by the way. So that's kind of this sound here. So again, once we start going in here, so let's go maybe from bar 3 and kind of listen to this chunk again. So just doing kind of things like this can drastically improve the feeling of the song because as we know, music is tension, it's release, right? We're building up to something. There's the climax of the song, and then you kind of slowly go down to something more soft, and there's all this kind of tension like a rubber band. You're pulling it, you're releasing it, so on and so forth. So the thought of this here, so right here in bar 4, The idea is to kind of build up this tension, and then by bar 5, we're kind of releasing it, which is why this filter sweep works so good because it almost sounds like you're kind of breathing out, you're kind of releasing, right? And meanwhile, on bar 4, it's kind of building up to that. That's why it's kind of increasing in volume, and then there's the I'll show you this patch here. It's actually quite interesting. Okay, so let's take a first look at this first riser here. So let's solo this guy, and let's open this one up. So a lot of these aren't really very complicated, so to speak. It's just kind of, you have to listen to the song, or this is what I do. I listen to it, and then I kind of hear a certain sound in my head before I'm going into and maybe a next part or bridge, whatever it may be, or something's increasing, and I think, okay, what would this sound like? What kind of tension sounds? And I kind of oddly mouth the sounds of that sometimes. So if we look at this guy, we're using 2 different oscillators, and then we're also using some stuff with the noise, and we have some modulation here, which is kind of just that, right? So the main driver of this, which is really cool, is this this mod envelope. So I have this from here going from 1 all the way here to 4, which equals 1 bar in our session, and then I have this tension just a little bit like that, which kind of just helps ease the tension and kind of doesn't go so linear, kind of ramps up a little bit quicker towards the end. It's a subtle move, but I feel like that kind of helps a lot. So there's a couple things going on here on the modulation stack. So one is going to be this oscillator 1 noise volume, which is this guy, because a little bit of noise helps a lot, and then you can kind of right click and find the right, I guess, the right flavor of that noise. The next one is going to be this step 1 volume mix, which is actually really interesting. So on both of these oscillators, they're going to step sequencer 1, which is this here, and just doing this basic pattern. And I liked that kind of gated sound, but I didn't want it to necessarily sound gated the entire time. So what we did, we dragged this mod envelope, you drag and drop, you hold it, and then you go over to the step sequencer and then drop it on this volume mix. And then here we have about 96, so almost 100%. And the interesting thing here is that, yes, it goes from the beginning here all the way up to almost 100%, but it doesn't do this linearly. And this is what's nice, the mod matrix, as you can see these different shapes here. So the step 1 volume mix, like I said, I don't want this linear, so you click here and you almost have a secondary envelope. So take a listen when I hold a note. It stays down here for half of the time, and then when it's about halfway, then it kind of really starts giving it gas. You see how it kind of just snaps up right there? So that kind of gives the effect like maybe there's a little bit of that step sequencer there, and then right about here, just it's fully engaged pretty much for the most part. So that is this one here. And then we have this oscillator 2 volume, which is basically this guy. We're increasing this level here. This has some unison on it, some full panning, and yeah, full unison, some detuning, stuff like that. And then slot 3 age, which is one of my favorite things to do here. So on the first stack, which is this first oscillator, this is going to out FX1, which is just a compressor, some delay, and some reverb, just to kind of fit it in the track a little bit, kind of helps out. And then at FX2, we have a little bit of wave shaper, which is this shape here going through the wave shaper, and then a delay again. And then on the master, again, we have another compressor, and this is the vinylizer. So this is the slot 3 thing. So if we click here, you can just load this thing up here, and this age parameter is actually really, really, really cool. So for example, let's say we disable this for now. That's what it sounds like fully engaged, but what we're going to be basically doing is this. So almost kind of opening up, right? It's almost like our ears or something over, and then it slowly goes and it opens up, and then right after it's done, that's when the when bar 5 comes in with everything, you know, the drums and the lead and everything like that, which is kind of the idea of that there. So we can turn this on here, and I did the same kind of concept here, where I didn't want this to be so completely linear, because sometimes linear curves don't necessarily sound too natural. So doing a little things like this here in the mod envelope is super helpful. So that's this one in a nutshell. Again, nothing really crazy, but it's just those little tiny screws that add up, you know, simplicity begets complexity, that whole concept there. And the next one here is just this triangle thing, which is oddly simple as well. If we solo this guy, that's really all that's going on here. There's one note here, which is half a bar. And if we double click this guy and take a look here, so we have a triangle wave going through a wave shaper, some more distortion, 2 delays, one at an 1/8 note and one at a 1/4 note. And then we have some reverb going on here as well. And as before, we have the step sequencer 1 here, which is this guy. And this is kind of the rhythm going here. And I did bring down the gate to kind of give it a little bit more of a snappy vibe. And you can even use that as a lead too, and that's why I'm saying if you make these interesting ear candy type of patches, you can play different notes, you can kind of play different patterns as you play them. Right, you can do interesting things like that. So that's this one here, nothing too crazy. There's some modulation on the filter cutoff, and then the amp pan here with the step sequencer 1. So this guy is also modulating this panning here, and then also modulating the filter. As you can see, these two moving here. Okay, so there's that one, nothing too crazy. And then we have a classic filter sweep, which, I mean, I think we probably all love this sound here. It's kind of a cool one. Yeah, and don't overlook filter sweeps. Put some unison, 7 voices, get a nice filter, some nice resonance there, and kind of just play with the decay. And then, yeah, it can sound really cool on a downbeat. Kind of really fills things up because we're tensing into something, and then the beat drops, and then you put something like this right on the downbeat there. It's actually really cool. Nothing crazy in EQ, giving it some lows, taking out some mud here, enhancing the highs with a shelf, and then a delay, 8th note here, cutting off some low end there, and then some reverb. So nothing too crazy on this one here. Like I said, most of these patches are very simple, but it's those tiny little things that really make something shine. And then we have the second riser here, which is this one. Which again, it's nothing crazy. It's almost like the classical noise transition thing, which is cool, but it's a little bit different. It's not just white noise and you call it a day here. There's actually a couple things going on. So if we play a note here, we can see that this oscillator noise volume 1 is getting modulated. So this guy right over here by mod envelope 1, which again is this guy. And this curve is a little bit different. It's not linear. I kind of bent this one up a little bit, and we're starting here at 1 and going to 4, which is a bar for us. And then finding the right noise profile with the right click. And then if we look at the stack here, so we have bit byte, and this is the preset combed feedback 1. And then we go into a delay at an 8th note, and then some reverb, compression, and then another filter, which is just interesting because in one of the, I think it was the last one or maybe 2 videos ago, we're talking about signal flow. So this saw wave, if we're to use this filter here, we're basically filtering just the saw wave, and then there's, we're technically not filtering after this bit byte. So that's why I wanted this filter down over here. So first we have the bit byte, then we have delay, reverb, and then we're compressing all of that together. And then we're adding a filter after that. So this filter motion here is coming after all of these effects stack right over here. And then we're just doing the 1 pole low pass 6, which is kind of a very smooth filter for things like this. And then we have our cutoff kind of about halfway. And then we're modulating this here as well with, again, this mod envelope. So it's kind of opening up as we're starting to go into a next section there. So to enhance that tension, we're increasing the volume, right? So it's getting quiet into louder, and they're also increasing the frequency, so it starts a little duller, and then it starts getting a little bit more high frequency content in there. So that is this second riser, and then we use some of these again. And then we have this rhythm here, which again, this is nothing too crazy. So let's take a look at that one real quick. And where are you here? So it's rhythm. Let's take a look here. So that's really it. Nothing crazy here. We're starting with a saw wave, some unison here. And we're actually using the VPS Talkbox filter, which this is a very interesting filter, I think. And then we're modulating this a little bit with an LFO. And if we look at the LFO, this is a random LFO. So we're getting random spots here on this vowel knob here, according to this LFO. And it's going at about, what are we here? A quarter note. So now the effect stack. So we have a delay here, and this is 1/8, kind of cutting off the low end there. We go into a phaser, and this is on the auto wah preset. And then we go to an equalizer. We're cutting off a lot of low end here, and then boosting a little bit around like 5, is that 5K? 8K, looks like, yeah, 8K, something like that. And then we have some reverb here to kind of, again, fit it inside the track. And then this is going to ARP1. And what's cool about this here is that here is basically our rhythm. So in our piano roll, we just hold down one note or write in one note or something like that. And then the ARP is going to determine the pattern. And if you're in Avenger, what's really nice as well is we have A, B, C, and D. So this can mean that we can have 4 independent different types of patterns. And then we can maybe attach this here to a macro. So maybe on different sections, we say, I want this rhythmic pattern to be on C, whatever we decide to use on C. And then you just automate that accordingly so you can have multiple different patterns like that. Or doing your piano roll, really doesn't matter. But yeah, just thought I'd like to point that one out there. And that's pretty much all of these here, except the last one here is going to be this perk. And I made this one a while ago. So it's a lot of fun to make interesting type of just weird one-shotty kind of strange unique sounds that you kind of just put on your track as kind of like a garnish. And this one, I have to unmute this guy or solo it. It's just this. Right, and this has key tracking, so as we hit different notes, we're gonna have different pitches here. This patch, I saved it without key tracking, but I wanted to put it on here because it was interesting to play with the different notes, so that's something to think about. So this one's not really too crazy. We have 4 voices of unison. It's pretty detuned here. And then we are going to the where we are, the FX1, and we're doing some compression, some expansion here, kind of takes it out of the synth, I feel, and then some reverb. And really the trick is going to be this filter here, and we're using the comb here in the special category, full resonance, and then our cutoff's about like 112 or something like that. This polarity here is all the way at the top. So generally, if you want to make some really interesting metallic-y kind of strange sounds, play around with the comb filter, because you're going to have some interesting ones. As here, I've made some different kicks, some different percussions here and snares and things like that, because those things come in handy later on when you kind of have a track together and you want to spice things up and kind of make it a little bit more personal, I suppose. And yeah, you can kind of build the tension and release around it. So at the end of a song, or maybe in a 4, 8, 12, whatever, 16 bar loop, I'll kind of listen to it and then just think what could be kind of cool, what can enhance this. Maybe like 2 notes here right before the next bar comes in, or maybe a swoosh from the left speaker to the right speaker, or maybe 2 notes on the left speaker, 1 on the right, and then it goes into something else, kind of things playing off each other, the call and response kind of concept. So that's kind of the topic I wanted to talk about today. Try to put some arrangement out. Maybe if you just got this pack as well, put down some sequences and put some leads on it, and then open up a couple different instances of Avenger or your synth of choice, and just start to try to add interesting things to make the song cool sounding. So with that being said, let's take a listen to this one more time. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something, make some cool ear candy patches, and we'll see you in the next video.